My friends, I have been brought here as you are newly arrived at Jamestowne and are unaccustomed to this place, most unnatural. Most of you will embrace the weather and surely the naturals that inhabit here. There are those that cling to the desire for peace amongst them. I am amongst those. However, I must relate to you that the most learned of gentlemen here, the most pious, embrace that their souls can be turned. But in their natural state, I fear they are more aligned with Satan. As you know, I arrived here 2 years past now, 1610, in service to my Lord Loire, captain of his 50-man honor guard. He departed after a year, and I remained to observe and advise those that would come after. Last year, 1611, the High Marshal, Sir Thomas Dale, arrived. His intent to settle a new plantation further up the King's River at a place now we inhabit in Rikers. But afore he did, he determined to reconnoiter. And I have it from several that were with him what occurred to them. They arrived near to a village, Appomattox, that had been abandoned by the naturals, and they took possession of it, and cornfields lingering nearby. They situated themselves in a yehaken, a longhouse, established a court of God, and nigh on nightfall, the first night there was a discussion of how, as Sir Thomas had reached out to the Mamanatoic, Powhatan, entreating that he were desirous to settle further up the river. The emperor did tell him that were he to do that, he would see their destruction in a very bad way. He implored them not to consider it, to abandon any thought. Sir Thomas sent message back that he found it compelling, but that he would continue with his intent. All were huddled around about a fire, save the sentries, who were well placed. When just as the conversation stalled, they heard from a nearby adjacent cornfield, "Hey ho! Hey ho!" Give them a start. Men fell to their weapons, and they looked about, and from another direction, completely different, "Hey ho! Hey ho!" And again, from the former cornfield, "Hey ho! Hey ho!" as to answer. And then they saw very swiftly one of the naturals break from the cornfield, leap over their fire, disappear to the far. And then, my friends, they said they were bewitched. And for near half a quarter of an hour, they fell to their weapons, but not with their gun barrels proper, but their gun barrels inverted against them. They took up cudgels to beat one another, as if their messmates were their enemies. And as swiftly as it had come upon them, in half a quarter of an hour, as if they came awake from a dream, they came back to their senses and looked about for the enemy, and were startled to discover that they held were their own. They grew very still and quiet, and the rest of the night had little more to say, but they doubled their guard. Thomas, when he related the story, offered to me that he was convinced without question that they had been pawned. They had been bewitched by the natural. 4 months later, Sir Thomas, downriver, 35 miles from here, the Nazimans had promised free trade with us for corn. Sir Thomas arrived with men in half suits of armor, as am I, well armed, intending peace. But the naturals had laid an ambuscado. But they were much horrified as the arrows were deflected off of their armors, for they'd not ever seen their arrows not penetrate we English. They took note that after half an hour, in the distance, their conjurers gathered together around a great fire and took from it ash and burning logs and hurled them around about their heads as the papists hurl a censer, spewing out smoke and ash and flame. One of the Indians that was accompanying Sir Thomas Dale, when queried what the priest and conjurers in the distance were doing, explained it was little more than they were beseeching Okis, the god that brought all bedevilment, to cause a great rain to fall upon us, for that rain surely would wet the gunpowder and the match that would ignite the guns. Sir Thomas and the other men around about him found it curious, and they laughed. But my friends, it was not a quarter of an hour later, not 5 miles away, on a perfectly clear day, a grave thunderstorm raised, lightning and a hard rain, not close enough to douse the gunpowder, but just no other reason that it could have been raised, save by the priest and their alignment with Satan himself. Guard yourselves, say your prayers, and tend the church as you should, for we are surrounded by the worst